Got 152 yards. Should be just a nice, comfortable 9-iron for him. They're going to go nuts when he hits this thing.
That's dirt.
Yo. Welcome in, golf fans. My name is Joe Idona. You have stumbled your way onto the Preferred Lines podcast and live stream. We're ready. We're still in Hawaii. We're talking Sony Open this week. I've got myself and a guest along to give you everything you need to know, preparing you for the course. We'll recap a little bit of last week, what happened at the Sentry. Look forward, dish out some picks this week to win the Sony Open. I'm going to take you sort of, and I did this last week, but my guest will help me along the way with this. I'm going to do something I've never done before on this show again and take you kind of behind the previously closed curtains and show you my stat model, unfiltered, transparent access. It's available to anyone as well who are part of the membership that I'm going to talk about shortly. Course-specific filters, player rankings live on screen. Like I mentioned, guests along here just momentarily. I can't wait to get this going. Once again, I got to mention that this show is proudly supported and presented by the good folks over at Rotoballer PGA. Promo code is LINES for 10% off any premium PGA sub this entire year. Super excited to get going on it. Can't wait to show you guys all the stuff that we have coming in that regard, but it's going to be really cool. We've got some great content producers over there already churning out content. Stuff for this week already up. My top 10 power rankings are released. Rotoballer.com, go to the PGA section, type in that promo code. Okay. Waste no further time, folks. Tonight, we welcome to the show a friend and kind of like an industry-leading creator in terms of sports content. I believe him and his team have created what I think is the most comprehensive and complete data-driven modeling tool in golf history. He is the content manager of Betsperts Golf, Mr. Ryan Noonan. Welcome to the show on a Monday night. How are you, sir?
It's a hell of a welcome. So I appreciate it. I'm flattered, but it's stoked to be here and just, enjoy picking your brain. Sharp guy, along with the rest of the team at Rotoballer. I mean, just nothing but absolute studs over there. So excited to top shot with you tonight. There's lots to talk about. I love the Sony, and yeah, let's get into it.
Love the Sony. Before we get there, let's do a little bit on what was a historic, record-breaking performance from Hideki Matsuyama. 35 under par, Ryan, at Kapalua. I do not want to diminish what Hideki did here. It was awesome, but I'd be somewhat disingenuous for me to say I wasn't kind of feeling like the grumpy old man yelling at the screen about just how easy it was. My problem, Ryan, is bogey never really felt plausible, and the absence of hardcore consequence in golf sometimes makes it less compelling for me. What he did was unbelievable. I don't want to take away from that, but more overarching thoughts on that style of golf just wasn't what I'm feeling personally. I know I got some backlash when I posted a couple tweets about it. How did it make you feel to see those guys shooting 30 under par pretty easily?
Yeah, I'm back and forth. So I think I understand both sides of it. So I 1,000% understand where you're coming from, especially when we get these signature events, we get the cream of the crop. We want to see them tested. We don't want them out on a muni that we can play, which, we can play Kapalua technically. But to see them, I think that's also part of it too, is I don't know, the birdie fest that we typically have that are in the normal rotation. I always think of Craig Ranch or something like that. We're not getting the top of the field there, right? Right. Jackie's not going to Craig Ranch and Morikawa's not going there. And the top of the board typically gets tested in the way that you're kind of talking about very often. We don't see these guys get the shot to do the birdie fest thing. And I think it's the best spot on the schedule for it. All right, just you're in Florida. I'm in Chicago. It's ice storm outside right now. I want a little bit of give me some vista views. I want to see some rolling terrain. Let's just kind of get our footing back into the golf space a little bit here. Again, it doesn't feel like we're off that long, but so I don't hate it. I think I would probably hate it a little bit more if it was March, right? We're in a little bit more of the meat and bones and meat and potatoes of the schedule here. So yeah, I mean, I understand both sides of it. There's a spot for it in the schedule. I think it's at the top of the schedule. But I'd love to see the best of the world, see what they can do and get into the 30s, because they can't do that at the Memorial. And we have Riviera and the Memorial and all those other ones that we get to see. So it is what it is, but I understand why you would feel that way as well.
I think that's the general consensus. Just sit back and enjoy it for what it is. I don't know why I was so off taken by it. Look, what Hideki's doing right now is this could be like the peak of his career. He's won 3 of his last 17 starts, big time notches too, Ryan. Riv, Sentry, St. Jude. What I've noticed is a good spike putting week for Hideki is just pretty much leading to victory. He's gained at least 3 strokes putting in 4 starts in the last calendar year. All 3 of his victories, and the other one was at Pinehurst where he finished 6th. So it seems like he's such in a groove right now. Flushing, his short game is exceptional. He has plenty of power still left off the tee. Still one of the best long iron players on the face of the earth. If he has a decent putting week, if he gains 3 strokes putting, he's very likely to win that golf tournament. But maybe like going back to the course, I guess maybe this is just this tournament's identity now. Like guys are going to come out here at the beginning of the season and shoot 30 under. This used to be like kind of an exclusive event with 28 to 30 players. We've now sort of doubled that field size. And I guess like, I don't know. I guess where I stand is like there can be great golf courses with quality designs. Like I think Core and Crenshaw are amazing. Like Kapalua looks phenomenal for like a 5 to 15 handicap. Like Ryan, you want to take a buddy's trip there? Sign me up. Like let's go play Kapalua.
Let's go.
That shouldn't matter for the PGA Tour. I think they need to choose courses with a defense mechanism, and that defense mechanism can't just be like weather. Like it can't just be like, oh, they're going to shoot 35 under if the wind doesn't blow. Well, then it's not that good of a course for them to choose. If it's solely dependent upon 25-mile-an-hour winds to have some sort of defense and create some sort of consequence for these players, I don't think that's a great spot for them to go. How do you sort of feel about that?
That's totally fair. It is somewhat of an iconic start on the tour. So, how you kind of differentiate in terms of having an Aloha swing without it would be a little bit interesting. I think what you could do with that land is really hard too, right? Because you bring in the fact that like you have to play it that way in case there's weather. But the weather is kind of the only thing. We have a handful of those too on tour. It's like, hey, this place, Sony is one of them. Maybe not to that degree, obviously, but because you get these spots where it's like early in the week we were told it was going to be soft. And next thing you know, you see these balls just bounding down the fairway and you're into the 400-yard drive stuff again. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't hate it for what it is. And maybe making it a signature event, I would understand if someone had a problem with that. But again, we took away the TOC moniker and kind of, this is the way around that to extend the field and make it even a little bit bigger, which I think is also an interesting way to go about it. So yeah, I'm less bothered by the entire thing.
Yeah, I hear you. I think it's just, I'm searching for avenues on like what's most appealing for pro golf, like to the average viewer. And I'll spend some time and energy later in the show talking a little bit about like an experience I had over the weekend going to one of the TGL exhibition matches, another avenue they're exploring to sort of create appeal. But like what makes it good or bad and for a viewer? And I think, and I don't speak for everyone, but my consensus is that part of that appeal of professional golf has always been a relatability to the players. One, like it's a sport you can go out and play. And two, there's always been this like steep, dramatic consequence in golf. If you don't play well, you don't get paid. You wasted money. You put your caddy up in a hotel for the week. You lost all this out and you didn't play well enough to get paid. Hell, Ryan, this was like the entire premise of Netflix season 1 is like golf is great because it's the only sport where there's a cut. And if you don't play well enough, you make no money. They centered the whole, Netflix knows good TV, right? They centered the whole show around this narrative. And now we have these events where these guys are just dished out free FedEx Cup points, and they paid 59 out of 59 guys. And Brian Harmon finished dead last and made $50K to go out there. That kind of stuff bothers me, and I don't think it's how you create like rooting interest in terms of like the fans. That's fair.
It kind of makes me think when you're talking about that too. Like we go back to Valhalla, right, and kind of like how we handled that in our space. And that's the thing too is I want to try to step back a little bit and think outside of our bubble, right? Because we are, Like I'm talking about, modeling the Sony on a, Friday night at midnight, and my wife fell asleep when most normal people are probably watching really entertaining stuff on Netflix. But we definitely have to understand that we are the 1% of the 1%. And while we had a problem in the community in terms of what the ask was at Valhalla for a major championship, was it not entertaining? It was actually, we had 3 really entertaining players there in the mix at the end with a little bit of Vic, then obviously with Bryson in the mix. And then we have, Xander kind of getting over the hump. It was not the test that we would want a PGA championship or a major to be, but at the same time, it presented a very entertaining golf tournament to the casual who's probably more likely turning in to, the PGA than they are even the Sentry. So, going back to your point of what are we trying to do to #grow the game, these things are kind of convoluted because while we're talking in one hand, the end result is totally different. If this was not decky by margin, and it kind of felt like margin, even getting up by 3 strokes, to your point, because like bogey just really wasn't in play. You're having these like tap in pars, like that was the punishment, right? If you weren't going ahead and peeling off, eagles and birdies, like just 7, 8 in a row, you were kind of going to be, dead on arrival. So if it would have been maybe a little bit closer, I think you would at least still have been entertained. But again, we had kind of 2 guys, we had somewhat of a Sunday match play event, and the other guy couldn't catch up. So I think this would have been even these guys peeling away from everyone, but having it actually be really entertaining in the end. I think we still would have had a little bit of fun with it.
Yeah. And, I did think it felt over for me on 16. And this was sort of like one thing that I jotted down as I watched 16. And I talked about this in my show last week before the season. I talked about it in regard to Justin Thomas, how he basically spent the last 2 months training speed and getting faster and increasing distance. And I thought about this like in relation to Colin Morikawa, because on that 16th hole, they have that center fairway bunker. It's like 260. I look back at the leaderboard. I checked the top 10 guys. All of them hit it over that bunker or past it. Morikawa ended up in it at 265. And Hideki cleared it. He made easy birdie there. Colin did not make birdie. It was over. And I'm like, it seems like Colin has this like unteachable to a degree aspect of like elite approach play. Like it's like when a player you're coaching, I coach my son's little lacrosse team. Like you get a kid that's like super fast and you're like, I can't really teach kids how to be faster, right? I can teach them how to like throw and catch. Speed is a gift, like 4.4 speed. That's what Colin has the equivalent of with his iron play as being the best in the world. You can't replicate it. He can go after speed, and it's that secret sauce that I think is sustainable and trainable for him. And I feel like right now we're in like an equivalent to like the steroid era in pro baseball. Like when you have Maguires and Sosas, these drivers are so big, they're so forgiving that you can hit it anywhere on the face. Like this is the era we're in right now, and Morikawa seems content like being Derek Jeter, like not staying away from all the power and not exploring distance. And I just wonder how you cannot go after that at this point. It's one of the things, if I see him at TGL, I'm going to try to find a creative way to ask him if that's something he's training for. But at this point, I feel like it's a genuine big thing to sacrifice week to week, is not being able to clear bunkers, not being able to go for spots that other players are able to go for. It makes winning that much harder for him. And it kind of reared its head on 16 when I thought that he still had a chance if he could flip that one hole. Can't clear the 265 bunker, match is over.
Yeah, it's interesting because you listen to him talk and it sounds like he's been a little bit on a journey to get back to the buttercut that served him really well for a little bit. And I feel like maybe the offseason sounded like, and I think I saw some like maybe post round 1 quotes from him, and he was talking about how he really can trust it again for the first time. Whereas, in years past, I felt like he maybe was trying to get away from it to be able to draw the ball and manipulate it a little bit different. And maybe that's something that becomes a in season or maybe a 2026 project for him. If he feels like he kind of has his stability back to where he was as a multi-major at a really young age, maybe lost it a little bit. Again, he's still been elite, but winning golf tournaments is really hard. But I feel like maybe having that just core foundational piece back into who he was and who he is, then maybe from there you can build onto that and build and getting a little bit more competitive with what you're saying, adding distance, adding speed, all those different things without losing kind of your origins of who you are as a player.
Yeah, and it seems like so doable. Like it doesn't take like a huge muscular athlete. Like we've seen a lot of these guys go after it and be able to achieve it fairly quickly. It's just you want to be a top 10 player in the world. I don't feel like over the long term you can always sacrifice distance every week and just expect to make that up with your approach play, considering that you like aren't the best putter in the world either to rely on. I wanted to talk, Ryan, briefly about TGL. You going to check it out tomorrow night?
Cannot wait. I'm really excited.
Really?
Can't wait to hear about your can't wait to hear about your experience.
I'm going to pull up just the lineup for tomorrow for anyone who wants to check it out. But I went this weekend, checked out the exhibition match. The arena itself is awesome. It is like the magnitude of it is pretty huge. The walk up feels very impressive. There's staff everywhere. Inside is really cool. So there's a couple of people I noticed, like Roger Steele is the MC. Claire Rogers was doing some stuff. Marty Smith, who is like kind of on course reporter. He's basically down there interviewing players between shots. He's trying, I think, Ryan, to like get them to hopefully turn up the volume on personality and trying to induce them with certain questions to make them look. I think one of the biggest hurdles for them is you have to captivate an audience to either root for you or root against you. If they don't know you at the end of 2 hours tomorrow for these 6 guys, that's not good. You either want them to like you or you want them to dislike you, whatever it is, but you have to create some sort of emotion there. And I think that's what he's there for. Scott Van Pelt will be calling it from a booth upstairs. One of the ideas I had is like, he doesn't have anyone next to him. I believe like they should bring in one of the players from the other teams to call it with SVP. Idea. Like if they brought in Rory or Tiger, like if they put SVP and Tiger just with microphones for 2 hours, forget what's going on the screen. That's going to do numbies like big time. In terms of the competition, it's 15 holes. The first 9 holes are alt shot. All the 3 players will hit. The last 6 holes are played 1v1. Each player gets 2 holes against the other. Ricky and Lowry are going to hit the first tee shots. Here's the big thing that I don't think is being factored in enough. The use of the hammer and this hammer thing is going to ultimately, I think, dictate who wins most of these matches. It rotates back and forth from the team. So like to give some context for people out there who want to understand how it works. Let's say it's Ricky versus Shane Lowry, right? And this happened in one of the exhibition matches. Ricky hits one into a fairway bunker, like 250 yards. He's got 200 left on his approach. Lowry hits one better. Okay. Lowry gets it out there 300. He's got 150 yards left. He's in the fairway. Lowry would then is in a great spot to throw the hammer. It's basically a yellow flag. It looks like a penalty flag of the NFL. He throws it, doubles the hole to a 2-point hole. And it's hard to score. Like out of the first 8 holes that I watched, 6 of them were ties, and then each team scored a point. So it's hard to score. Once Lowry throws the hammer, the hole doubles. So from there, hang with me here. Ricky's in the bunker. He hits it, let's say, to 20 feet, a pretty good shot onto the green. Lowry hits one to 10 feet, a really good shot. But now Lowry has given the hammer back to Fowler. If Fowler makes that 20-foot putt and is in for birdie, he can replay it back. The hole is now worth 3 points, and he's already in with a 3. So what I found interesting about it is you can actually play it after you hole out. If you're putting and you're away, and you make your putt, you almost have to play the hammer at that point because you have nothing to lose. And if you win 3 points in one single hole, it's essentially curtains for the match. The around the green play is pretty cool. I have some concerns about some of the tech and the accuracy. I'll know more about that tomorrow. The green is on this tabletop, basically, that rotates 360 degrees. And what I had thought was the green itself was able to move and manipulate, like go up and down and change undulations per hole. That's not the case from what I saw. So what happens is it just rotates and you're playing it from different angles. But there is a large plateau in the middle of it. Makes it, if you're on top of that plateau putting to a downhill pin, it's almost impossible to stop the ball. It's really, really difficult and touchy with the putts. You almost have to dive them at the top and hope you hit the flag. So the green situation is definitely where the excitement is. Hitting into the screen at some point got a little bit stale after about the hour mark, but the excitement level is definitely happening like around the green and figuring out the strategic element of the hammer, because I think if you use it properly, it's a massive advantage. If you use it incorrectly, you're dead.
Yeah, that's
cool,
interesting.
I'm excited for it.
And I love the short game piece, because that really is right the kind of downfall of sim golf. And like I said, not something that you probably have to deal with a lot, because you could probably play year round. But us up north, when we're like, I got a golf trip every year in March. It's really hard for me to get out and play actual rounds before I go down by your neck of the woods to get out there. So sometimes sim golf, just to get actual contact on the ball and, just knock the dust off a little bit, is all we have. So the making it like a thing that I really like to do often, it's the short game piece. So I'm excited to see how that plays itself out, having the ability to hit off of like real grass and actual textures instead of just, a mat, and those things are going to be interesting too. So yeah, I'm really excited as just a golf fan to hopefully make it something that we can watch on a Tuesday night when we're waiting for other stuff to happen, right? No football on a Tuesday night like that. So we can have betting lines, different ways to bet on it, team rooting interests. So I was a Boston sports fan. I'll be, back in the Boston Common. Yeah, but I'm excited for it. Just find an angle and let's get it on.
It'll be cool. So New York Golf Club is minus 120 favorites tomorrow. The Bay is essentially even odds. It should be pretty fun. I'm going to be there almost all day tomorrow. Not all day, but I'll get there a couple hours early. Going to check out the warm-ups. So, stay tuned to my Twitter feed if you want to check out more. Ted, SVP, very good. Love SVP. What I was saying is the complimentary player piece to it, bringing in Tiger, bringing in Rory, heck, bringing in Ricky when he's off, to give some insight into how they're playing these holes and some of the strategic elements, I think could just be a good added piece for the television. All right, Ryan. So let's talk. I want to go over Sony Open stuff. I want to do a little course preview on Waialae and some of the historic notes that I have. I want to hear if you have anything to sort of add there along the way. And then I want to give people an insight to the rabbit hole, kind of what I have dialed up in my stat model this week. So it's one of the longest running tournaments on tour since 1965, a quintessential Seth Rayner layout, utilizes sharp dog legs and strategic influence off the tee. It asks questions still nearly 60 years later of the modern day PGA Tour player, which I think is the mark of a really good course. Par 72, but they play this as a par 70. They also flip the nines for if you play this, as a member, but it's barely over 7,000 yards. Closing par 5 on each side, all Bermuda grass throughout. The rough can get a little bit, it's not thick and gnarly, but it's unpredictable, which gives players fits and makes increases the variance when coming out of that, which in turn increases the importance of playing from the short grass. Mostly a less than driver course I had in my notes going back, although in recent years, I think players have begun to play more aggressively and have had some moderate success, trying to take it over dog legs. I still think from a modeling perspective that accuracy is probably the way to go for me. Short game, so important here. Benny On did a ton of damage last year. Siwoo, Cam Smith, JT, Kevin Na, Hideki, Russell Henley. These are previous winners of this event. All possess phenomenal around the green game. And the middle of the bag is back. So it was basically eliminated last week where it was either long iron or wedge. Here you hit almost 2/3 of your shots from that middle portion of your bag from 130 to 200 yards. I used to really, Ryan, want to play players from the Sentry coming into this event because I thought it was nice for them to knock a little rust off in tournament competition. But maybe that narrative is shaking in a little with Grayson Murray and Siwoo the last 2 years. Last thing I had is Data Golf has it as the second most predictive course on tour, making it one of those stops where you definitely have to introduce course history into your model. Anything to add there from what you've kind of seen from Waialae over the years?
Yeah, quickly, I want to pick your brain. Why do you think it is and I don't have the answers. It's not I don't know it, and I'm asking you. It's just, I'm curious why you think it is a course history sticky place. I know that it is. I know that Data Golf has it, but it doesn't have it's not so nuanced, right? When we think of actually in relation to the other course, that's the most sticky course history place, Augusta National, where the undulation of the layout and the greens and all those things, like you need reps. I think it's just where it is in the schedule. Do you think it's anything beyond that? Okay.
I was going to say, I think it has a lot to do with the schedule. I think it has some to do with the design elements and players' willingness to take on risk versus reward. Players who have had success formulating a plan with how to play certain holes and what clubs to hit off tee and what ranges you want to be on your incoming approach shots. But I also think it's schedule related. I think different players have different off-season regimens, and some players who are really geared up for the start of the season and want to start hot probably have a different leading into this event practice schedule, what they look like when they arrive at Waialae, those kind of things where it's become a reliable spot for them and they want to start their season off hot. And I think there's other players who maybe want to ease a little bit into the season and give themselves some time off during the off season. And then this is very much more of a tune up, a spot to maybe rev your engines. But yeah, it just seems like a lot of players with similar skill sets. I mentioned the short game. I mentioned highly accurate players like Henley have had a ton of success here in driving accuracy. And even like guys like Brian Harmon year over year, Corey Connors, guys that always play from the fairway in the short grass, always come back because they know that those elements of their game are more emphasized in terms of success here than they would be at like half the stops, which turn into bomb and gouge.
Yeah, I think it is self-serving in a way. Like you just laid out, guys that know that this is a track that they can come and compete on. They come every year. They're not played out based off of the yardage. And then also Justin Ray had, I know it was last year, I haven't seen the updated stat where he had like 8 of the last 10, and that died again. There was 8 of the last 11 now because Grayson won last year, had played the Sony before. But you also have the 80% cut made rate for guys at the Sony that had played the previous week. And that also is like, to me, a little descriptive more than predictive, because at the end of the day, it's the tournament of champions, right? It's the best players, right? So they're going to go in the next soft, weaker field events. So some of that stuff, I think there's some noise to that where I think, especially maybe you're in DFS lineup building, there very easily could be some massive chalk cores this week, and you could probably build smart around differentiating yourself off of some of that stuff. But we have I'm really excited about it. We just launched it like last week, a course stats sheet basically over at Betsperts Golf that kind of validates some of the things that we will think about a course. And you talk about mid irons and how that's used a little bit more here. That's backed up in the data. Driver usage is interesting because we were looking at the last 5 years. We have an outlier. We have the 2020 iteration of this event. That was the Cam Smith year. He won at 11 under. Win got really, really kind of off the hook there. And driver usage that year was 48%. A PGA Tour average event is about 68%. So we were about 20% less. Over the 5 years here, though, it's about 62%. But really, if you eliminate 2020, it's just maybe right around tour average. We've seen just an increase of guys taking the club head cover off and ripping a little bit because, they're having a little bit more success because they grew up the rough a little bit last year, but still it's not as penal as some other places, because if you still are so short on some of these par fours, a lofted, gap wedge in, that you could probably still hold or, probably not roll back as much. It's probably not as penal as it's been in other spots, especially if you can get it down there. So I still think there's something to the positional golf, and the guys are going to keep it in the short grass will always be benefiting from it. But this is another example of it's becoming my passion. Yeah, you got it up here on the screen. It's awesome. Yeah. My passion is to just eliminate driving accuracy from all of our discussions. It is the most noisy stat that we could possibly have. And it's tied into total driving, which people like as well. Which, again, like not a awful stat, but kind of a flawed, like 2 rankings combined into making one stat. There's definitely going to be some holes in that, but you can see it here on the screen. Distance from the edge of the fairway. That is what we're trying to do with driving accuracy, because driving accuracy is binary, right, Joe? Like it's you hook it in the woods and I just missed and it rolled through, because you have a lot of that here. It landed, ran out, and all of a sudden you're in the first cut. Well, those are both no's to the answer of accuracy. Correct. Right? Distance from the edge of the fairway tells us, like, are we in play? I mean, where it jumped out to me the most last year, I think it was Houston, and Scotty was in that field. Obviously, Scotty in that field was 90th in driving accuracy. He was first in distance from the edge of the fairway. So, like, what am I trying to do here? Like, if I'm just rating distance from the edge of the fairway, that's telling me, okay, I need a guy to keep the ball in play off the tee, control your golf ball, manipulate it through the wind, keep yourself in play for that second shot. It's such a better stat. So while some places don't have that in their model building, having it with us, in your data for, rotoballer subs, preferred line listeners, it's going to be a fantastic win for everybody.
Yeah, guys, if you don't have the rabbit hole yet, betspertsgolf.com, promo code TOURPICS, get you 25% off. Absolutely do the annual. It comes down to like $4 per week or something. This is the most advanced golf betting tool I've ever seen. Like you just had here, this is really cool. And what you mentioned with driver usage, you go back 2020, 5 years ago, less than 50% of people pulled driver on this course. Now 2024 was at 64.8%. You have detailed data here in terms of every hole, birdie, par rates, doubles, scoring average. You've got stuff up here. And then when you go to the rabbit hole, so Ryan, kind of walk me through this. Where, if I wanted to look at something like distance from the edge of the fairway, where would I find that stat?
So you're defaulting to the strokes gained view, which is, again, where we spend the most of our time. But you go into off the tee, and you can build your own total driving here. So it's going to default to rank. I like to look at average because it's going to give you an understanding of where the delta is between guys, right? Where you just see 1 versus 2, where there might be a pretty sizable gap between those guys. So it is, right next to good driving is DFEF, distance from the edge of the fairway. Right there. So you can go ahead and filter. I like to look at anything from the tails. I think sometimes you can see, and if you go ahead and click minimum round right above that too, there's a minimum round feature box next to the view expert rankings.
Yep. You
can kind of filter out some of the, we're going to get that little thing pop there, but you can filter out some of the smaller sample stuff, whereas you're going to eliminate the guys that just, haven't played much. So if you kicked it out to, say, you're defaulting the last 6 months, you kick it out to a year, you're probably going to get a better sample here in the very top right up. Last 6 months, you change yourself to a little bit because these guys haven't been playing much. But Russell Henley keeps the ball in play off the tee.
Surprise. Corey Connors, we mentioned him too. Andrew Putnam, Mav McNeely, like these are highly accurate players. Distance from the edge of the fairway makes sense for all of them. Connors.
Yeah. So if you look at Mav, right? Look at Mav. You scroll down. Who's just off the page here? Someone's got a red box. They're just off the page. Tom Kim, right? So Tom Kim, top 10 in distance from the edge of the fairway. That bright red driving accuracy number is telling you that he's probably way down the board. So like looking at where there's some discrepancies, I think is really useful to get an understanding of where there could be some, better data because I think distance from the edge of the fairway matters a ton. I think it matters a lot this week.
Awesome. Good to see you too, my brother. Ted, is there any wind forecast any concern with the rabbit hole rankings? How would you answer that, Ryan? I'm not quite sure. Does he mean?
I'm not sure what he means, but you can look at wind. You can go into the filter by condition section here.
Okay.
Yeah, right where you're at, and scroll all the way down to the bottom on the right. This is gusts of wind, but I think what we're going to have here this week is some sustained in this range too. And we just updated all of our wind data today. So the wind data is.
I'm going to apply, Ted, just so you can see moderate to windy conditions. So rule out anything calm. And everything is going to change for you within a few seconds. All of those. Oh, I have to go.
So your last 6 months too. So you probably haven't any of these guys play to the time frame in the top right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Just kick it back to 12 months or 2 years, probably. You'll see windy conditions. You get yourself a bigger sample size. That could be the tough part too, is making sure that when you're adding too many conditions where you start to overfit. I mean, this is a large sample, so that's good. Anything around 30.
Same guys: Siwoo Kim, Tom Kim, Russell Henley, Brian Harmon, Ben Coles, Doug Gim, Lucas Glover, all highly accurate players. So there's so many filters here, guys. And Ted, if you don't have the rabbit hole, use my promo code. It'd be a huge help. But like the amount of filtering conditions that you have are what I think separates this from any other one that I've seen. So you can separate by par, field strength, course length. It gets down to green surface. You can search for fairway surface, architectural. You have guys on here that other websites don't. You have Seth Rayner on here. You can look at Tom Fazio, are gaining strokes off the tee very easy, are hitting fairways very easy, are greens and regulations easy. Like there are so many factors here that you can really go in as deep to literally the rabbit hole as you want to go, Ryan, or you can keep things fairly simple. What else is pretty cool, Ted and Mark, and anyone who wants to check this out, is this expert rankings feature. So not to toot my own horn, but you ever want to see my full stat model, you can click it right here. It's available. I had this posted yesterday, Sunday, January 5th. You have the great Matt Vincenzi. Steve Shermer is, if you don't know Steve Shermer, the most in the weeds, like spreadsheet golf guy I've ever known. Andy Lax is on here. Your model is usually on here, Ryan. Ron Close, Andy Molitor. There are a ton of stuff on here. Here's just a quick glimpse, guys, at my stat model for the week and kind of who I have ranked out where, just to give you guys a glimpse. So I have Russell Henley, number 1 player in my model. Hideki, number 2, Keith Mitchell, number 3. That's scary for me, Ryan, because Mitchell does this to my models and it makes me want to bet him. But I've refused so far. Ben Griffin, Billy Horschel, Harry Hall, who's playing awesome, Silverman, Harmon, Ben On. It's a great place to start. You could see I have like strokes gained ball striking on short to very short courses here as a filter. I have around the green stuff specific to that one's all over around the green. Then I have specific to Bermuda grass surfaces, fairway Bermuda, roughs Bermuda. I have everything from strokes gained total at Waialae. I have putting from 5 to 10 feet. So statistically, this is the easiest course to putt from inside 10 feet on the PGA Tour. Greens are relatively flat. At any time, you want to see who's number 1 in strokes gained putting from 5 to 10 feet on Bermuda over the last 12 months of the year. All you got to do is click this little filter here, and it's going to bring you up your top-ranked guy. Tom Whiting, Chris Gotterup, Taylor Montgomery. So some foggy data there just because of lack of rounds. But overall, it's going to, Cam Davis is up there. You see I have him starred for a good reason. Infinite possibilities of things that you can do with the rabbit hole. Promo code below and in the link in terms of this video on YouTube is Tour Picks. Use that 25% off. It's a great deal.
Yeah. And when you had it up, you can bring it up too real quick. Production side. If you had the filter on, when we were looking at the windy conditions, and there's the blue numbers next to the amount of rounds, we're talking about the sample size that's played. If you want to see what those rounds played were, you can click into that. It'll take you to their player page and it'll show you how they performed in each of those rounds. So you want to get an understanding of when that was. Oh, that was all of last Colonial, or that was the bad wind days at the Masters. So you can get into the weeds and know specifically when those were as well. So yeah, I think that's really useful.
Cool. We're going to get into some picks just a second. Curtis, I didn't want to ignore your question. So I did think driving distance was fairly accurate. The holes are quirky. They do have, by the way, if you want to scout them, all 15 holes, they have the layout for the course and what they're going to play. So it's 5 par 3s, 5 par 4s, 5 par 5s in only a 15-hole match. Several of them are wild. This one, quick draw here down in the bottom right, is like a little tiny island fairway. There's the spear, which narrows the further you go down to. So a ton of like kind of gimmicky, but real risk reward options. Like, look, let's be frank. Like, it would not be compelling or interesting long term to watch pros play Pebble Beach on a simulator, Ryan. Like, they've got to introduce these kind of weird holes with like these almost like Hot Wheels tracks that go super downhill and speed slots and areas to entice players to really go for it and increase like consequence, like I was talking to about before, for really bad shots. Ricky, Shane Lowry are going to hit the opening tee shots on this par 4 of the plank. It's a pretty easy fairway to hit. You can pick a couple of different spots, and then it comes down to approach. But I'm telling you, that little hump in the green that they do not move is a problem. Like, if you are on the wrong side of that, you can't take a direct line across to the pin. You have to go up that hump and then die it at the very top. So you could get stuck up there. You could hit it way by. There are going to be a lot of opportunities for people to double holes and then double it back. So I think that's going to be like the pivotal point in the match, is how they utilize that hammer and being on the correct side of that green. Because I saw a guy chip in. I saw another guy nearly hole out. Like, there's possibilities around the green. So it'll be fun to watch. Let's go ahead, Ryan. I'm going to bring up now the odds, and let's bet the board for the Sony.
The
Favorite, my guy has not withdrawn yet. Hideki Matsuyama is plus 900 to win the Sony. He's awesome here. He just won. He's in the best form probably of his life, and he's 9-1 to win. It's not a terrible betting price, to be honest. Corey Connors right behind him at 16-1. You've got Tom Kim, who failed to qualify. I didn't even realize. I thought he just skipped the Sentry. He did not qualify for the Sentry. Is back and probably highly motivated this week at 20-1. Russell Henley at 20. Keegan at 25. Benny On at 28-1. Mav McNeely at 28-1. Those are your favorites, Ryan. Sub 30-1. Is there a guy who's you're drawn to initially on the top of the board?
I took two swings at that top. Guys that they modeled well for me, but even if they didn't model well for me, this is an event where I like to have my guys. It's not an accident that, like, I know some people don't love him. He has a hard time closing historically, but I am a Russell Henley guy. I think he is, the things that I think matter in what we do, the statistically relevant things that are repetitive, he's really damn good at. And I think could be a guy that, even though he's not a young guy, he's not an old guy, he can still get better. I mean, you can still improve. And I think we saw that a little bit last year, right? Last couple of years, he's contended at some big boy golf courses that you would think wouldn't be fits for him. Pinehurst and the Masters and Troon, he was very much in the mix there too. So I thought he'd be shorter than 22, to be honest. So I was very happy with that price and happy to go to the well. I mean, again, I had the ticket in 22 when he got run down by Hideki. I've held the painful Russell Henley tickets, but I'm still there. I think it's going to feel even better when we start to close some of these here. And 22, I thought was a great price for everything he does so well.
Yeah, I'm in as well at 20-1. So we've aligned on pick number one at the top of the board. Have also been through plenty of Danger Russ painful tickets. God help me, he's number one in my model in the rabbit hole and the most detailed stat modeling software out there. I'm going back to Russell Henley. Approach play last 36 rounds, check. Solid mid-iron player with real big upside, I think, in terms of like when he has those peak rounds where he gains 3-4 strokes on approach. Unbelievable around the green, guys, particularly on Bermuda grass, top 5 over the last 50 rounds. Number 1 putter on Bermuda over the last 50 rounds. One of the most accurate players. We show there those distance from the edge of the fairway stats. Any way you slice it in terms of looking at driving on courses that demand accuracy off the tee, Russell Henley's your guy. And I noticed one of the other things about Russell Henley I noticed on Betsperts is like you have basically, let me see if I can actually pull it up. Let me go back to my model here. And I'm going to bring it on screen right now. One of the things that I thought was pretty cool was this feature where this is the individual player page. So you're getting a ton of data here. You see here Bermuda, like unbelievable putting on Bermuda. But this was the cool one. Average strokes gained by course length. Look at how much Russell Henley spikes on short golf courses. Gaining 3.85 on the short courses. Average, he's down here long. This is just like some of the data that you get a little bit of insight with. But short course, demands accuracy. I don't think you can go wrong until the end of Sunday afternoon when Russell Henley lets us down. But he's had a nice little fall. T7 at the U.S. Open, 5th at the Open, top 5 at the Tour Championship. Your number 1 player in strokes gained total over the last 5 years at the Sony Open. Russell Henley at 20-1 plus, I think makes a solid bet.
Yeah, absolutely love it. We typically, I think, because of the nature of golf, and we're cheering for our bets more so than like fans of teams, right? We, sports origins, we're fanboys of some, it's how it started, right? The only one I would say that for, the PGA Tour, where I'm probably a little bit more fanboy is I'm a Keegan Bradley guy. I'm a New Englander. I get to go and spend, the ability that we have being in this industry sometimes to get some credentials, to get to go to some events. And I got like 10 minutes with Keegan at the Wyndham this year. And it was just the coolest thing to talk to him about golf data, the Ryder Cup, his ability to be, competitive and what he does, just fantastic. And it took my fanboyness, Joe, to the other side. And in a spot where I wanted him to close last year, I had it 75-1. We lost in the playoff where I felt like everyone had Ben and tickets. And then Grayson just shot us all down with that absolute beautiful putt on the first playoff hole. And I'm going back to the well on Keegan. I wish it was a little bit of a longer price for me to take 2 shots south of 30. But the FOMO, I can't have it, dude. Like I can't. It's not worth it to me to not have the Keegan ticket. So I have it again. Playing really good golf.
Really
What we were asking for, again, the ability to control the golf ball off the tee, the ball striking. We get the spike putting occasionally, really strong mid-iron player, all that stuff. Absolutely love Keegan, who I think is still uber motivated to earn his spot on this team. So whether that happens or not, probably not. But at the same time, if he's going to do that, he's going to have to show up and pick off some of these type tournaments too. So good showing for Keegan is what I expect. Does he win? We'll see. 25 might be a little short, but I had the ticket.
highly motivated. I can tell you that for sure. Also good person, like can speak to that too. I don't know Keegan. I have a close friend. Shout out my boy Chris. He's probably watching the show right now, but he's close friends with Keegan. They go on family trips together. Their kids go to the same school together. He talks endlessly about what an awesome person that he is. So the type of people that you want to root for, especially with everything that's at stake for him this year, you know that he wants to play really well. Had a nice little performance at the Sentry. Been kind of hit or miss at the Sony, but last year's T2 I think gives him a lot of confidence, and he's certainly in great form. Going back to the board on guys in that sort of mid-tier range, Ryan, you've got Robert McIntyre, Siwoo Kim, previous champion a few years ago, Pendy, who had the off-screen albatross last week at 35-1, Eckroat 40, Poston 40, Kitayama 40. Luke Clanton is here to debut his season at 40-1. Sahith all the way down at 40-1. Griffin has been a popular pick at 50. Harmon 50, Thompson 50, Harry Hall 50. Those are some of the names. Ryan, anyone in here got you intrigued?
Took two swings in here as well. I would love to get your Luke Clanton thoughts, because I thought 40 for Luke Clanton was look, we're talking about a 21-year-old kid who's never won a golf tournament. So for me to come on here and tell you that 40 is a great price is probably a hard sell, because it's literally never happened. But man, Joe, I mean,
you think he's that good?
I just think these kids nowadays are coming in a little bit more ready.
They're so good.
You know, I was on with Andy Lack today. And Andy Lack made the Victor Hovland comp, which I thought was really interesting. Because I Hovland and I hate putting it out there because it's just not even fair, right? Because he's played like 8 events. But there's like a lot of Colin Morikawa ball striking type stuff here. Like he is unbelievable.
I know.
As a ball striker, his iron game has been insane. Total driving distance from the edge of the fairway. That's why I think it's probably, he's probably right with a little bit more Vic than Colin, because he has the distance. Now, look, the around the green game has been a little bit shaky. At the end of the day, you're probably not winning here if you need to really rely on your around the green game a ton, unless it gets really windy, right? Because the greens and reg is significantly higher than the tour average event. He's right. He's a Panhandle, Florida kid, right? Or, he's from Florida.
Yeah. I think Florida State, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So like Bermuda is, if you look at his player page, Bermuda putting is really nice. He's not going to be caught with any of these weird Bermuda chips. So he's used to that too. So yeah, I mean, I just kind of thought, based off of how well he's playing, some of the other prices he's been at in the fall, or some of these alt field events where he's been 30 or south of 30, I thought we'd probably get around 28, 30 here. So they were 50s at Open. And it's been 40 and stabilized to 40. So, I get why some people will be reluctant to. It flies in the face of course history and, Sony appearances for sure. But I don't know. Sometimes these kids just nowadays come in ready. Like, we didn't think that Ludwig would just kind of dominate RSM. That's not a Ludwig course per se, unless you're just a class above that pool and you just are maybe a little bit early. You never go back to that field, right? Yeah. So this could be like, hey, Luke Clanton just never comes back to Sony because he's just in a different class.
Right. It's interesting how that works on courses like this where you club down a lot. I've noticed you often will get players who are effortlessly long, who you almost see a little bit of an uptick in their off the tee game, because if you hit it 320 and you miss it, your miss is worse than a guy like Russell Henley who hits it 290, right? But if you're clubbing down and still able to get out there really far with a highly accurate club, like a 4-iron or a 5-iron, and their distance really takes over at that point. Like if they can hit a 230-yard 4-iron, like someone like Luke Clanton, can do, it's a huge advantage on some of these shorter courses. I have a guy, I'll talk about him now. I took Cam Davis. I was waiting to bet him. But Cam Davis, like most Aussies, they like Hawaii. They like the early season swing. T13 at the Sentry, my guy freaking battled. +4 through his opening 4 holes, then got a penalty essentially because Will Z hit his ball, and then he didn't realize. Like, I can see why he did it, because Zalatoris hit and he sees the other one laying there. He's like, that's mine. Insane that he battled through that to still top 13 after a horrid start. But 5 straight years likes this event, has been 32nd or better all 5 years. Like I mentioned, he's plenty long off the tee, but he actually is much better on these short club down courses. 2 wins at Detroit kind of muddy that a little bit, because you can bomb it there, but you look at where else he's played well: the Heritage, the Amex, Sawgrass, Wyndham, Charles Schwab. Many of these really old school designs like Waialae that utilize dog legs and kind of entice you to take less club off the tee and put a priority on fairways versus some of the typical bomb and gouge tracks on tour. Great putter from close range. I love his aggressiveness nature, particularly in the outright market. Like, you look at someone like Siwoo Kim, a different outright bet than a DFS play or a top 20 or a matchup play, because his aggressiveness, I think, is what allows him and serves him very well when he's down the stretch and needs to make a couple of moves. Siwoo, Grayson played super aggressive, like down the stretch last year at this event, and it's often rewarded with victory. So I think it's one of the things that always makes Cam Davis an intriguing outright bet. The other guy, sorry to skip over him, but at a shorter number that I bet this week was JT Poston. Elite short game, upticks on Bermuda. Good form here, despite good form in general, despite a really bad putting week last week at the Sentry, but won the Shriners on Bermuda, 5th at the RSM. I think that might be Bermuda as well. But his off the tee game is built on emphasis on accuracy over power. T21 in 2023, and then followed it up with a 6th place last year, which was his best finish year. Another player I believe in their upside and can come through on victory, can make clutch putts and be aggressive when the shot is called upon them, on a Sunday afternoon, which you can't say for everybody in the field. So Poston and Davis were my 2 in the range. Did you have another one you wanted to mention?
I did. I also bet Austin Eckroat at 45.
Okay. I thought the price was short. So tell me why. When I saw him, I'm like, it just didn't feel like he fit with the other names around him.
That's fair. And I've heard people say today too, like they can't go to Austin Eckroat because they can't bring themselves to think that he's going to be a 3-time winner in such a short period of time. Like,
it's true, man.
We're going to punish a guy for winning golf tournaments. Like, I get it. It's the same thing with form, right? You hear it all the time. Like, we want form. Unless you win, then you got too much form and we can't use you the next week because you just won, right? You hear it in DFS all the time. It's like, we would just want a bunch of second places and then we can bang the drum on you all day. But 3rd in my model in strokes gained on short courses over the last 2 years. Keeps the ball in play. You can think about where he's won or really performed really well is in places where, distance from the edge of the fairway matters. Those mid irons can be a problem. Wind becomes a problem too. He's fared well in those conditions as well.
Yes.
The putter, spike putting weeks, you can go into the rabbit hole and look at floor ceiling and mess around with like what we talk about spike putting weeks or spiked approach weeks. Well, how often does that actually happen? How often are you gaining to 5 strokes putting? Like, how frequently does that happen? And we see that a little bit more than baseline for Austin Eckroat. So I like just his fit for this course and just a guy that I like to back. So yeah, probably feel more comfortable at 50, 55, but again, just, I like where he was in the model and I wanted to back it up.
It's hard. I think you're looking at like a lot of people are high on Davis Thompson this year, like Jack said. Sahith being that number, it's a really bad course fit for Sahith, which is why I did not consider it. Did not look great last week. But you're talking about one of the most talented players in the field. I mean, the guy finished 3rd at the Tour Championship, made a huge run there. Would it shock me if people took that inflated number and like he ends up being there at the end? Not really. But Eckroat, like, I think about PGA National and like how that may be a decent comp here. Short course, fast Bermuda, flat greens, flat course, like power isn't necessarily always reward. What is in terms of what makes it a short course in terms of the rabbit hole model? Is it sub what yardage?
So it's a combination of yardage and then the proximity of where the majority of where the approach shots are coming from, right? So
Okay.
it's not necessarily just like tips to tails length of the course. It's kind of how the course is going to play. So I think it's usually like 72-50, I think is the threshold to be short.
Okay.
But again, it's adjusted to par too, right? So we're at a par 70 at 7,000 yards. So that's why you're also beneficial to bring in the scenarios, kind of like you did with the wind, right? Sometimes you want to look at average, short, and very short, because what you're really trying to do is take all the long courses out of the data set.
Yes.
Right. Because if you're trying to tell the story of what's going on at Torrey Pines or Augusta or something like that, you don't want that data in what we're trying to do. So that's kind of what the goal of it is too.
Awesome. Okay, moving down, we kind of get in these long shot ranges. Sepp Straka, just to mention real quick, on my hot list, like almost ready to pull the trigger there. I just feel like proven guy that this is a good course fit for. You got my boy Denny here. Daniel Berger's getting a little bit of popularity. Harris English, Hughes, Horschel, Dietrich played awesome last week. Hoagie was your first round leader last week. Eric Cole was very popular last week at 75-1. Thorn Bjornsson, the long hitter, Novak, Kuchar, Echevarria, who had a great fall. These are just some of the names in here, Ryan, when you start to get into – this is a tournament where we've seen some long shot winners before,
Sure.
especially when you look at Grayson, what Grayson was able to do last year. Where you got any long shots for me?
I played another one of the kids. I took the 90 with 6 places on the each way market. I know there are hundreds available, but I played Thor at Open too. Now, again, longer hitter, but also when you look at distance from the edge of the fairway, shows up pretty well. When you think of where he's played well as of late, it's like, wouldn't have thought that RSM would have been a top 5 for him. Doesn't
He
feel
almost
like
he was right there at the RSM,
right there. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it now. Yep.
Short game, around the green, putting, I think probably better than Clanton at this point. Maybe a little less consistent with his iron play, but I think the driver is a real weapon. Whereas I think he's going to be another one of these guys where, as he kind of matures, we'll be playing him at Torrey and places like that, right? We'll play him at the API and some spots where like distance and accuracy really matter a ton. So this doesn't necessarily feel like a great course, but the way that it's changing and being played a little bit, right? Where I think we're seeing, the data will tell us we're seeing less club down than we had seen in the past. If he can just continue to have distance and keep himself in play with short wedges, if you look at like he's the best in the proximity range from 150 to 175 over the last calendar year. It's a small sample size for him, but that's the highest above average range that we're having in play this week when we look at that core stats page. So typically tour average events got about 19% of the approach shots in that range. We're about 28% here. So that matters, I think, a little bit more than most weeks. He's top of the board there. So 90 covering 6 positions. Again, probably early on the kid, to be honest, but I thought the price was a little bit long. And I think the market's agreed. It's moved, seeing like 65s elsewhere.
Early on the young guys, good way to be. I was interested, kind of a bit of maybe a lazy handicap here, but just like was intrigued by the number on Nico Echevarria at the top.
Yeah.
Last 5 starts, dude, wins the Zozo. Good field. 6th at the Worldwide Technology, 29th Bermuda, 2nd at the RSM, 32nd last week at the Sentry. Great, like very hot putter, especially right now. Not a ton of distance. I don't think it kills him here. He hits like 68% of fairways, an accurate player, pounds greens in regulation, and has decent course history. 12th here, kind of out of nowhere in 2023. I didn't think it was a horrible number on Nico. If you want to go there, I still may. But the long shot I took, I'll give you 110-1 now. Took a price this morning at 125-1 on Nick Taylor. Just been amazing at Waialae.
Yes.
11th, 7th, his last 3 starts here. 2nd in strokes gained total here over the last 5 years. If you're a believer in the predictiveness of course history at Waialae, this was a price this morning that was kind of tough to ignore. Solid middle of the bag iron player. Hits like 70% of his fairways, gained strokes, ball striking in his last 5 starts. And statistically, Nick Taylor is a crap putter. Not here, though. And I think it has a lot to do with really flat, easy greens. Like there's not a whole lot to read, right, at Waialae, from my understanding. Plus 3.2, plus 4.4, plus 6.3 strokes gained putting in his last 3 events at the Sony Open, which is a massive improvement off of his baseline. Does damage, seems like every year, early in the year, one Phoenix, one Pebble. It's like this part of the season, it seems to be when Nick Taylor is peaking, and a big price at 125 to 1, down to 100, 110. There's probably some 125 still lingering out there, but that was my top long shot when I looked this morning.
Kloss is with you. He played 150 this morning on Nick Taylor. So if you like the course history stuff, it's hard not to like him. And we've seen early season stuff, like you said, pops out for him for sure.
Yeah. What my boy here in Vinci Bell is asking about Lucas Glover. You got any Lucas Glover takes for this week?
Fall was better than I thought. Again, those fields are a little bit tougher, but
not bad.
Yeah, I mean, Procore T13, back-to-back T3s at Sanderson. Again, comp course, I think, this week. Black Desert kind of peeled that back again, T3. So we've seen some decent stuff for him. Just off the tee, can he keep it in play and give himself enough shots? Because we know the putter can be really problematic. So, you kind of need for him to kind of have like above baseline performances in 2 key metrics. And that's a little bit harder for me, but we're deep down the board here. So you could sell me on a top 40 or something like that for sure. Not a guy that I want to go to the well on wins. Yeah.
37th, brother, in my model. Strokes gain approach, he's number 1 over the last 36 rounds, and just
pretty good
all over strokes gain approach. Top 10 around the green on Bermuda. I did have a little driving accuracy in there. Good from these ranges, 150 to 200, 125 there. But you mentioned the putting is really obviously where he struggled, and the off the tee game. When I filtered in short and very short courses here, he ranks 80th in the field. So those are obviously some of the concerns. It seems like he's talented enough to overcome them. And at 90 to 1, there's always going to be holes in those players' games when you look across a full model like that. That's what I got on Lucas.
When someone's got to lean that far down the board, like I'm so reluctant to talk someone off of a bomb that they just jumped out to them too. I have a Lucas Glover bias because when I talked to him about data, I got the response you would probably think, right? I talked to Akshay about it, young 22. He loves it. His team's all in it. He's trying to get as much as he can. Spieth is like kind of in the middle of the road and likes a little bit here and there. And you talk to a guy like Lucas Glover and he's like, he could not give a rip, Joe. I'll never not go to a tournament because I can't putt on Bermuda. Like he just, he could not, he doesn't want to know any of it. His team doesn't have a team looking into it. It's just not, a little bit older. It's just old school style. So he could give flying rip about any of the stuff that we're talking about here. So my mind is always like, oh, you're missing out on some data that would probably help you practice better. I don't know.
So good stuff, dude. Listen, Ryan, I can't thank you enough. An hour out of your time on a Monday evening on a very busy schedule to make some time for Preferred Lines. It was awesome to talk to you. I'm so fired up about utilizing the rabbit hole, and what you guys have built over there at Betsperts is beyond commendable. Like I mentioned, the best software I've ever seen for trying to create golf models, any sort of edge that you can give yourself out there. Always worth it. Thanks again for joining us, man. Any last words? What else you got going on this week? You said you talked to Andy earlier.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, if you got a golf show, I think I'm doing it this week. You got, I think, another appearance coming up on Friday. Our own stuff over at Betsperts Golf, where you listen to podcasts. You can find that on our YouTube channel as well. Just check it out, betspertsgolf.com. Use that promo code TOURPICS. Get that 25% off. Again, there are other modeling sites out there. We are cheaper or in the same ballpark as all of them, and we're in a spot reality wise now, and just they're not fighting it anymore. I think not that the other sites have thrown in the towel, but I think they've started to develop other things and maybe not work on trying to compete at this point. So it is what it is. It takes a lot of work. A lot of it is by hand, classifying and having some of this stuff be done, but we wanted to have the best data out there as users on the front end. How can we make it tell the best story, for your audience and stuff like that? So people take advantage of it. Use that promo code TOURPICS. It's the best promo out there.
What's the annual?
With your deal, they get 25% off. So it ends up being like $199 or something like that, right around there for the year.
199 divided by 52.
It's an annual sub, so it's a rolling full calendar year.
$4 a week, guys. Less than $4 a week for total access to this. It is the best deal in all of golf. Ryan, you're the man. Thank you for joining me, man. I'll catch you next time. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, gang. That'll do it for this week's show. Like I mentioned earlier, go back, listen to some of the TGL stuff. I'll have some more stuff tomorrow. I'm going to be going to the event with my boy PGA Tout, which will be extremely fun. Keith, what's up? See you for the Palm Beach Circus tomorrow. So excited for TGL. I'll be there nice and early. Roundtable picks will be out from Roto Baller tomorrow afternoon as well. Top 10 power rankings out now. Before you leave here, give me 10 seconds. Like this video, subscribe to the Preferred Lines channel on YouTube. It would mean the absolute world to me. This has been another episode of Preferred Lines Podcast. You guys are the absolute best in the world and the lifeblood of this podcast. Thank you so much. My name is Joe Idoni. Good luck this week. Hit a winner. I'll catch you next time.